Ethan Ward pressed his face against the viewport of the Harmony Station, watching the swirling nebulae paint the cosmos in brilliant purples and golds. 3 years he'd been stationed here serving as a human liaison in the Interspecies Alliance, and still the beauty of space never ceased to amaze him. At 28, he was considered young for such a position, but his aptitude for languages and diplomacy had fast-tracked his career in the Alliance military. The Harmony Station represented everything the Alliance stood for, a testament to peaceful coexistence among dozens of species. Zephyrians, with their crystalline exoskeletons, worked alongside tentacled hydrogens in the engineering bays. Gossamer-winged Etherians fluttered through the corridors, carrying data chips, while massive Rockborn manipulated gravity fields in the cargo holds. And then there were the humans often overlooked and underestimated by their galactic neighbors. Another quiet shift, Ward. Commander Zerxak's translator crackled as the arachnid officer approached. Her 8 legs moved with mechanical precision, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight. Despite working together for months, Ethan still found her presence unsettling. "Just observing the Cosmos Commander," Ethan replied, straightening his uniform. "Nothing wrong with appreciating the view." Zerxak's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among her species. "You humans are strange, always looking outward when you should be focusing on your limitations inward." She paused, considering her words. "Your species shows promise, but you lack the refinement of true galactic civilizations. Perhaps in a few millennia, you'll be ready for real responsibility." It was a common sentiment Ethan had grown accustomed to. Humans were the newcomers, having achieved faster than light travel only 2 centuries ago. Compared to the Eternals, who had ruled space for 50,000 years, or the Vanguard Collective, with their 10,000-year military tradition, humanity was barely out of diapers. "Maybe so, Commander," Ethan replied diplomatically, though inwardly he bristled. "But every species has to start somewhere." "Indeed," Zerexak agreed. "Just remember your place in the grand scheme of things, young human. The galaxy is vast, and some threats are beyond your understanding." A shrill alarm suddenly pierced the station's ambient hum. Red lights bathed the corridors as crew members of various species were rambled to their stations. Ethan felt his heart rate spike as the universal emergency signal echoed through the complex. "All hands to battle stations," came the announcement in the melodic tones of Captain Serenity, an harmonist whose species served as natural peacekeepers. "This is not a drill. Report to your designated positions immediately." Ethan sprinted toward the command center, his mind racing. In 3 years aboard Harmony Station, they'd never had a real emergency. War was a thing of the past. In this sector, the Alliance had maintained peace for over 500 years. The command center buzzed with activity as he arrived. Holographic displays showed the outer rim of the system, where something was happening near the asteroid belt. Captain Serenity's luminescent form pulsed with agitation, a sure sign of distress among her people. "Report," she commanded, her voice resonating with harmonic undertones. Dr. Kepler, the chief science officer, a brilliant Nexan with an elongated cranium housing their oversized brain, manipulated the holographic display. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures emerging from hyperspace. Unknown vessels, class designation unrecognized by our databases." "How many?" Zerxak asked, her legs clicking nervously on the deck. "Initial scans show, by the void." Dr. Kepler's translator struggled with the concept. "Over 10,000 vessels, Captain. They're arranging in an attack formation." Ethan stared at the display in disbelief. The unknown fleet was massive, dwarfing even the largest Alliance armadas he'd seen in the historical records. Each ship appeared to be the size of a small moon, their dark hulls absorbing the light from the system's star. "Sir," Lieutenant Williams, one of the few other humans on station, approached nervously. "Long-range scanners show they're heading directly for the Alliance core worlds. Earth is in their projected path." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Earth? Home? His family lived there. His parents in Neo-Seattle, his sister studying at Luna University. Billions of humans going about their daily lives unaware that death was approaching from the void. Initiate Code Vermilion, Captain Serenity ordered. All Alliance vessels in the sector are to converge on our position immediately and send a priority message to High Command. Tell them, she paused, her form dimming slightly. Tell them that true war has come to our sector. Over the next several hours, Ethan watched as the situation deteriorated rapidly. The unknown fleet, designated as the Obsidian Imperium by Alliance intelligence, continued their approach with methodical precision. Their ships moved in perfect formation, showing no interest in communication or negotiation. The first Alliance response fleet, led by the mighty Vanguard Dreadnought Invincible, met the enemy at the edge of the system. Ethan stood in the command center, surrounded by officers from a dozen species, all watching the tactical displays with growing dread. Vanguard fleet reporting, came the metallic voice of Admiral Corinth. The Vanguard were perhaps the most militaristic of the Alliance species, their entire society built around warfare and honor. If anyone could handle this threat, it would be them. We're moving to intercept for the Alliance. The first engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes. Ethan watched in horror as the icons representing Alliance ships winked out of existence one by one. The Obsidian vessels barely slowed their advance. Their weapons tore through Alliance shields like paper, their technology far beyond anything the Alliance had encountered. Vanguard fleet destroyed. Dr. Kepler reported, his voice hollow. All ships lost, no survivors detected. The command center fell silent except for the humming of machinery. The mighty Vanguard conquerors of 100 worlds had been annihilated without slowing the enemy advance. What are we dealing with? Captain Serenity asked her, harmonics now discordant with fear. Before anyone could answer, the communications array crackled to life. A voice spoke, deep, resonant, and filled with cold authority. Lesser species of this sector hear the words of the Obsidian Imperium. You have been found wanting. Your civilizations will be harvested. Your technologies will be absorbed. Your worlds will serve our greater purpose. Resistance na amicasi is not merely futile. It is an insult to the natural order. The transmission cut off. In the silence that followed, Ethan felt the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. This wasn't just another territorial dispute or trade conflict. This was extermination. Sir, Lieutenant Williams spoke up, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Permission to contact Earth. They need to know what's coming. Captain Serenity nodded slowly. Granted. All species should warn their homeworlds. We may have little time left. As Williams rushed to the communications station, Ethan felt something shift inside him. The casual dismissal of humanity, the condescending attitudes he'd endured for years. Suddenly, it all seemed insignificant. His people were about to face annihilation, and no one in the Alliance truly believed they could help. But they were wrong. The next few days brought a stream of devastating news. The Eternal's Grand Fleet, said to be undefeatable, lasted 30 minutes against the Obsidian advance. The technological wonders of the Nexan defense matrix were ripped apart like tissue paper. World after world fell silent as the Imperium swept through the outer rim. Ethan spent his time coordinating evacuations, helping process refugees from captured worlds, and maintaining communications with Earth. His planet was frantically preparing for war, mobilizing resources and ships with a speed that surprised even Ethan. Human vessels approaching, reported Ensign Trill, a insectoid communications officer. Fleet designation Terra Defense Force. Current strength, by the hives. Over 15,000 ships. They're requesting permission to dock at Harmony Station. Captain Serenity's form brightened with surprise. Granted immediately. Open all available docking bays. As the first human ships arrived, Ethan felt a surge of pride. These weren't the sleek, beautiful vessels of the Eternals, or the angular warships of the Vanguard. They were practical, efficient, and bore the scars of hasty construction. But they were here. Admiral Sarah Chen, no, he remembered the instructions in the document. Admiral Sarah Thompson led the human fleet. She was a veteran of the frontier wars, a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. Captain Serenity Admiral Thompson began without preamble as she entered the command center. "I've come to offer Earth's assistance in the defense against this Imperium." Zerxak's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Admiral, with respect, your people lack the experience for this level of conflict. You should focus on evacuating your civilian populations." Thompson's expression didn't change, but Ethan caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "Commander, my people have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know war. This isn't a tribal skirmish or a colonial uprising," Zerxak pressed. "The Imperium destroyed the Vanguard in minutes. Your ships, while numerous, lack the technology to even scratch their hulls." A smile played at the corners of Thompson's mouth. "Everyone keeps telling us what we can't do. Maybe it's time someone found out what we can." The strategic planning sessions that followed were intense and often heated. The Alliance command structure was built on consensus and careful debate, very different from the human military's rapid decision-making process. Ethan found himself serving as an interpreter, not just of languages, but of cultures. "The plan is simple," Thompson explained, pointing to the holographic display. "The Imperium moves in tight formations, relying on their superior technology and coordination. They expect the same type of warfare they've encountered, large ships trading fire at long range. Because that is the civilized way to conduct war," rumbled General Tharn, a massive rockborn whose species viewed warfare as a formal art. "There are rules, protocols, honor codes to follow." Thompson's laugh was without humor. "General, there's no honor in extinction. The Imperium isn't following any rules we recognize. Why should we?" What she proposed went against every military doctrine in the Alliance. Small, fast ships using guerrilla tactics, asymmetrical warfare, targeting the enemy's supply lines and communications rather than engaging in direct battle. "It's unorthodox," admitted Dr. Vex, the Etherian military strategist whose species had turned warfare into a mathematical equation. "But given our technological disadvantage, perhaps unorthodox is what we need." The first test of human tactics came 3 days later when an Imperium scouting force approached the Kepler system. The Alliance had gathered its remaining forces there, a desperate attempt to make a stand. Ethan watched from Harmony Station as the battle unfolded. The Imperium scout fleet, though smaller than their main force, still outnumbered the Alliance 2-1. Their ships moved in perfect formation, weapons charging with ominous precision. Then the humans struck. It wasn't like any space battle Ethan had ever studied. Instead of the traditional clash of battle lines, human ships materialized from the asteroid belt like angry wasps. They had hidden powered-down vessels throughout the system using the natural radiation of the asteroids to mask their signatures. The lead human ship, the UES Defiance, charged directly at the Imperium flagship. As the enemy's weapons focused on this obvious target, a dozen smaller vessels emerged from its shadow, ships that had been camouflaged against its hull using magnetic clamps and stealth coating. "By the eternal flames," whispered Dr. Kepler, "their boarding craft." What followed defied every military textbook in the Alliance. The human boarding parties used shaped charges to breach the Imperium hulls, pouring inside their ships like a flood. Instead of advanced plasma weapons, they carried kinetic firearms, old-fashioned bullets that the Imperium's personal shields weren't designed to stop. Ethan watched in amazement as human soldiers fought through Imperium corridors carrying what looked like primitive tools. But these weren't primitive. They were adaptive. Crowbars and tire irons reconfigured into weapons. Improvised explosives created from common materials. Even the humble duct tape proved invaluable in the vacuum of space. "Look at them," Zerxak muttered, her compound eyes wide. They're using their ship's fire suppression systems as weapons. They're depressurizing sections and using the escaping atmosphere as propulsion. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, half the Imperium scout fleet was disabled or destroyed. More importantly, the humans had captured 2 intact vessels, something no other Alliance species had managed. Admiral Thompson's voice crackled through the communications array. Alliance Command, this is Admiral Thompson. We've secured the enemy vessels and are beginning technical analysis. But we've discovered something important. The Imperium warriors are strong, but they're not warriors. Captain Serenity's translation matrix struggled with the human concept. Explain, Admiral. They're more like antibodies, Thompson continued. Biological constructs designed for their specific form of warfare. They weren't programmed to handle chaos, improvisation, or desperation. When we didn't fight the way they expected, they couldn't adapt. The implications were staggering. The Alliance had been trying to fight the Imperium using the Imperium's strengths. The humans were showing them a different way. Over the following weeks, human tactics spread throughout the Alliance fleet. Zephyrians learned to use their crystal formations as improvised shrapnel bombs. Hydrosians turned their water manipulation abilities into high-pressure cutting tools. Even the peaceful harmonists discovered that their sonic abilities could disrupt Imperium electronics. But it was the humans who took it furthest. Ethan was aboard the human dreadnought Terra's Might when they encountered an Imperium harvest fleet near the Andromeda sector. The enemy fleet was massive, 300 vessels surrounding the planet Xerion, beginning the systematic destruction of its civilization. Traditional engagement would be suicide, noted Commander Zhang, the ship's tactical officer. They outnumber us 10 to 1. Admiral Thompson nodded. Good thing we're not traditional. What happened next became known as the Battle of Xerion, though historians would later debate whether it truly qualified as a battle at all. The human fleet didn't engage the Imperium vessels. Instead, they targeted the planet's moon. Using advanced fusion charges, they destabilized the moon's core. As it began to break apart, they used controlled gravitational fields to direct the largest chunks toward the Imperium fleet. What had once been predictable orbital mechanics became a chaotic storm of mountain-sized projectiles. The Imperium warriors, programmed for conventional space combat, couldn't adapt quickly enough. Their formations shattered as they tried to avoid the incoming debris. In the confusion, human ships struck from every angle, targeting engines and command centers, rather than engaging in direct combat. They're treating war like improvisational art. Dr. Vex observed his ethereal form shimmering with fascination. No set patterns, no predetermined strategies. Just constant adaptation and innovation. Ethan found himself grinning fiercely. They underestimated us because we're young. They didn't realize that being young means we're still willing to try new things. The Imperium's main fleet arrived 3 days later, and the real war began. What followed was unlike anything in the recorded history of galactic warfare. The Imperium had conquered hundreds of species using their overwhelming technological advantage and superior coordination. But humans didn't fight like other species. They turned cargo ships into missile platforms, loading them with kinetic weapons that massed as much as small asteroids. They used their own damaged vessels as kamikaze weapons, ramming them into enemy ships at relativistic speeds. They even convinced civilian populations to evacuate through Imperium lines, creating chaos behind enemy formations. Sir, Lieutenant Williams reported during one particularly intense engagement, the Imperium is requesting a parley. Admiral Thompson, her uniform singed from a boarding action just hours before, looked surprised. After all this, they want to talk. The meeting took place aboard Harmony Station, which had somehow survived the war despite being targeted multiple times. The Imperium representative was a massive artificial being, more machine than biological, its form shifting and adapting as it moved. We came to harvest this sector, it began, its voice resonating with harmonic overtones. Your resistance was unexpected. Captain Serenity maintained her diplomatic pose, but Ethan could see the strain in her luminescent patterns. The Alliance will defend itself against aggression. The Alliance, yes, the Imperium being agreed. But you are not the Alliance? You are something else entirely. Its attention turned to Admiral Thompson. Your species fights without honor, without pattern, without logic. You use tools as weapons, weapons as tools. You sacrifice your own vessels to achieve victory. You turn defensive positions into offensive ones. You... It paused as if struggling with the concept. You improvise. Thompson crossed her arms. And this is not war as the galaxy understands it. This is chaos given purpose, madness with direction. The algorithms that govern our perfect warriors cannot compute responses to your actions because your actions are not based on optimal solutions. Then maybe, Thompson said quietly, you should leave. The Imperium being studied her for a long moment. Your species terrifies us. It was Xeroxac who spoke next, her compound eyes reflecting the station's lights. As it should. The being turned its attention to the arachnid commander. You understand. I understand that we underestimated them. All of us did. Zurak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. We thought being young meant being weak. We didn't realize it meant being dangerous. The negotiations that followed were swift but comprehensive. The Imperium would withdraw from Alliance space. In return, they requested one thing that humanity never leave their home sector. You are a virus, the Imperium representative explained. Your methods, your philosophy, your approach to warfare, it spreads. Already the other species fight like you. If you spread beyond this sector, you will infect the entire galaxy with your chaotic methods. Admiral Thompson laughed. You want us to stay in our corner of the galaxy because we fight too dirty. Because you fight without limits, the being corrected. Because you use anything, everything as a weapon. Because when faced with extinction, you become something that makes extinction preferable to conquest. The treaty was signed 3 days later. The Imperium fleet departed, leaving behind only scattered remnants of their technology and a warning broadcast to the wider galaxy. The young species in the third spiral arm fights without honor. Approach at your peril. In the aftermath, as the Alliance began rebuilding, Ethan found himself serving as an ambassador to the other species. The war had changed everything. Humanity's status in the galaxy was completely transformed. You realize, Captain Serenity said during one of their meetings, that you've essentially been quarantined by the rest of the galaxy. Ethan nodded. We know. But we also know that it's not a weakness they're containing. It's a strength they're afraid of. Xeroxac clicked her mandibles in agreement. The Imperium conquered the Vanguard using superior technology. They conquered the Eternals through overwhelming force. But they couldn't conquer you because you refused to fight the way they expected. And that, Ethan said, looking out at the stars, is why every species now dreads the day humans go to war. Years later, as he stood in the same viewport where the story began, Ethan reflected on how much had changed. Earth was now one of the most respected military powers in the galaxy, not because of their technology or their numbers, but because of their unpredictability. Human military academies had been established throughout Alliance space, teaching other species the human way of war. But they all missed the essential point. It wasn't tactics or strategies that made humans dangerous. It was their willingness to throw away the rulebook when survival was at stake. Admiral Thompson, now Grand Admiral of the Alliance forces, had put it best. The galaxy thought war was a game with rules. We showed them its survival with tools. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In trying to contain humanity's chaotic approach to warfare, the galaxy had inadvertently created the very thing they feared, a species with a reputation for being unbeatable, not through strength, but through sheer terrifying unpredictability. As Ethan watched a mixed crew of humans, Zephyrians, and Nexans working on a new class of ship, one that incorporated human innovations with alien technology, he smiled, The galaxy had wanted to keep humanity in a box, afraid of what they might do if they spread. But what they didn't realize was that the box wasn't a prison. It was an incubator. And when the next crisis came, whether from the dark spaces between galaxies or from dimensions yet unexplored, the galaxy would once again learn why they should be grateful that when humans went to war, they did so on the galaxy's side. The tire iron mounted on the wall of the command center, a memento from the first boarding action against the Imperium, caught the starlight. It was a simple tool turned into a weapon that had helped save a civilization. In its reflection, Ethan saw the truth. Every species dreaded the day humans went to war, not because of the destruction they caused, but because of the creative, terrifying ways they found to win. And in a universe full of threats, yet to be discovered, that was perhaps the greatest weapon of all.